Have you ever stopped to reflect on what it really means to figure life out? It's not just about paying the bills on time or achieving that long-desired success. Often that idea seems like an unreachable goal, a dream reserved for a few brave souls. But what if I told you that figuring out life is not only possible, but inevitable for those who choose to face themselves honestly? Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychologist, once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Think about it. Every time something or someone deeply unsettles you, could it be that you're seeing a mirror, a reflection of something you'd rather not acknowledge in yourself? That's right. What if that discomfort was actually the key to rewriting your story? The journey begins with a simple question, one that disturbs many. Who are you when no one is watching? This is the starting point for diving into Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow represents that hidden, rejected side of ourselves, the part we try to bury as deep as possible. You know what's most interesting? It's precisely that forgotten part that influences many of our decisions, and yes, also our mistakes. The story of the man who figured life out is not some distant fairy tale. It's a journey that, if you have the courage, could become your own. It's not about magic formulas or cliche motivational quotes. It's about learning to sit with the discomfort of facing what you fear the most. The parts of yourself that don't fit into Instagram's perfect filters. In a world where perfection feels like an obligation, accepting your flaws is almost an act of rebellion. And it's exactly that kind of bravery that marks the beginning of any real transformation. Now imagine this. You're in a room full of mirrors. Each one reflects not only your image, but your memories, those mistakes you pretend to have left behind, and those desires you don't even want to admit. So what do you do? Do you shatter those mirrors or do you choose to face each reflection? The decision is yours, and it will define the road ahead. The man who figured life out wasn't a superhero or an enlightened sage or a saint. He was an ordinary person, like you and me, but with the courage to ask the question most people avoid. Who am I, really? On this journey, Jung introduces us to a fascinating idea, the collective unconscious. He explains that within all of us are archetypes, the hero, the mentor, the shadow, and many others. Universal figures that shape our fears, dreams, and even how we act. It's like discovering a map to a long-forgotten treasure. And suddenly you realize that despite all your inner struggles, you were never truly alone. But wait, this isn't about romanticizing the process. Diving into yourself isn't like a beachside spiritual retreat with sunset views. There is suffering. There is chaos. Facing your shadows is hard work. That's why so many people choose not to do it. But here's the difference. The man who figured his life out chose to look straight into the abyss. And do you know what he found there? That inner chaos is not the enemy. It's the fertile ground where the deepest transformations are born. Throughout this video, we'll walk through this inspiring journey, diving into Jung's teachings and stories that show the universal struggle to understand oneself. We're not here to offer simple answers. Our goal is to invite you to reflect on how this idea of figuring life out might apply to your life. So I invite you to ask yourself, if today was the moment to begin resolving your life, what would the first step be? Accepting a truth you've been avoiding? Facing a fear that lurks in the dark? Or simply stopping the habit of running away from who you truly are? Whatever it may be, what matters most is that you start. The awakening of the man who figured his life out didn't begin with something grand. It started with a simple yet powerful truth. Change is always born from within, and that's exactly what we'll be exploring together. step by step, on this path of self-discovery. Are you ready to begin? Human life at its core is one great search. We search for meaning, for happiness, for recognition. And at the heart of all this, we search for connection with others, with the world, and often with a part of ourselves that feels lost. But what if that search is pulling us away from our true self? Carl Jung called this dilemma the process of individuation. It's like an internal confrontation between who we are and who we're trying to be, a battle between our conscious self and the forces of the unconscious. It's not an easy road. In fact, it's one of those paths that demands strength, vulnerability, and above all, courage. But do you know what's most fascinating? This journey, as complex as it is transformative, leads us to integrate every part of our being, the parts we show to the world and the ones we prefer to hide. The journey of the inner hero isn't just a cliche found in books or epic films. It's a universal need, something we all go through, even without realizing it. Joseph Campbell, known for his studies on mythology and a great admirer of Jung's work, defined the monomyth, a universal narrative structure present in stories from all cultures. And here's the truth. You are living that story right now. Have you stopped to think about the challenges you've faced recently? Maybe it's tension at work, a conflict with someone close, or that inner storm of emotions you try to ignore. Those challenges aren't random. They're your own calls to adventure on the path you're meant to walk. The real question is, do you have the courage to answer those calls? For Jung, the greatest obstacle on this journey is not the outside world. It's our own ego. It's the ego that tries to keep everything under control. The part of us that pushes to avoid discomfort and protect the image we project to the world. The ego whispers, "You're only this. Don't touch anything else." But we are so much more than what we appear to be. Do you agree? True transformation begins when we have the courage to challenge that ego and give ourselves permission to confront what's hidden in our unconscious. Do you know what that process feels like? It's like standing in front of a dark cave. The entrance is intimidating. It almost warns you, don't go in. Inside lives something you fear, but also something priceless. That cave is your psyche, and the treasure within it is self-knowledge. But to reach it, you must walk into the darkness and face the fears that dwell there. If we look back, stories are full of examples of people who dared to take that leap. Frodo in The Lord of the Rings had to confront the corruption of the ring. Luke Skywalker carried the weight of his legacy in Star Wars. These fictional heroes are perfect metaphors for the challenge Jung describes, to face and integrate the dark, unknown parts of ourselves. But don't be fooled into thinking this journey is a straight path. It's full of twists, stumbles, and the constant temptation to give up. Do you know what Jung said about those moments? They're not signs of weakness. On the contrary, they mean you're making progress. A hero becomes a hero because, even when everything seems lost, they choose to move forward. The man who managed to put his life in order began with one simple but profound question. Who am I, really? And that answer didn't come without a price. He had to leave behind certainties, question his beliefs, and accept that he didn't have all the answers. It was in that uncertainty where he found the opportunity to grow. Now let me ask you, what if the discomfort you feel today is actually an invitation? What if your fears, instead of being enemies, are signs pointing to parts of yourself you've yet to explore? That is the essence of the inner hero's journey, to turn adversity into learning, doubt into self-awareness, and pain into growth. Throughout this video, we'll dive into that path and discover that the hero is not someone special, chosen by higher forces. The hero is anyone who decides to face what lies within. Fears, shadows, uncertainties, all of it. So I'll leave you with one final invitation. Are you ready to answer that call? Have you ever felt that almost visceral discomfort when you cross paths with someone who effortlessly irritates you? Maybe it's that person who speaks too loudly, as if the world revolves around them, or someone whose behavior you simply can't stand. But what if I told you that discomfort has more to do with you than with the other person? Yes, I know. It's unsettling, isn't it? Carl Jung would say that what you're experiencing is a reflection of your shadow. The shadow, according to Jung, is that dark corner within us where we store everything we avoid confronting: fears, hidden desires, and repressed impulses. It's like a mental basement filled with boxes covered in dust. You know they're there, but you'd rather not open them. After all, who wants to face something that could throw everything out of order? However, pretending those things don't exist doesn't solve anything. In fact, it was precisely when the man who managed to put his life in order decided to confront that dark side that he made a major breakthrough on his path. He didn't approach it like someone going into battle, but like someone seeking to reconcile with a fundamental part of himself. Think of the shadow as a mirror that distorts reality. When someone irritates you, more often than not, that person is reflecting something you reject in yourself. It's as if the shadow is tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Hey, look at me." Do impulsive people bother you? Maybe you've repressed your own impulses. Do you criticize those who speak without a filter? It could be that your fear of being misunderstood is surfacing in that judgment. The truth is, what you judge in others might be something that also lives in you, something you prefer to hide. Let me give you an example. Imagine a mother who constantly criticizes her daughter for being ambitious and determined. She says things like, "Don't want so much, that can be dangerous," or "People will think you're full of yourself." It seems like she's just protecting her daughter, but if we dig deeper, we find another reality. That mother in her youth was just like her daughter, brave and driven, but she was judged and rejected for it. To protect herself, she repressed those traits. And now she projects that unresolved conflict onto her daughter. It's an invisible game across generations, where one person's wounds are passed down in the form of criticism toward another. The truth is, facing the shadow is not for the weak. It's deeply uncomfortable to admit that what bothers us in others might be a hidden part of ourselves. Jung called this process shadow work, but contrary to what many think, the goal isn't to eliminate the shadow, it's to integrate it, to make peace with the part of yourself that you once exiled. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. So how do you begin? Start by reflecting the next time someone really gets under your skin. Pause and ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? Sometimes the answer might surprise you. It could be the fear of making mistakes, a wish that was never fulfilled, or anger that's been repressed for so long you forgot it was there. Another path is to pursue self-knowledge, therapy, meditation, journaling your emotions. These practices help you open those boxes in the basement. Little by little, you'll begin to notice patterns and feelings that were always influencing you, silently from the shadows. Facing your shadow takes effort, intention, and yes, a bit of courage to tolerate the discomfort it brings. But do you know what's truly surprising? That discomfort isn't permanent. It gives way to something much more powerful: the acceptance of your true self. The man who managed to put his life in order realized that his shadow wasn't a hidden monster. It was a teacher. He came to understand that listening to what it had to teach him was essential to truly grasp his fears, passions, and motivations. He didn't need to eliminate it, he needed to turn it into an ally. And so, what once felt like a burden became a guide for his growth. So now I ask you, what parts of yourself have you been avoiding? What aspects of your story or personality are you trying to ignore? Facing the shadow can be frightening, but it's also liberating, because in the end, only by accepting who we truly are can we be truly free. Are you ready to open those boxes? Transformation almost never arrives gently. It usually comes as a storm, destroying everything you thought was stable, rearranging your life in ways that feel unbearable. But according to Carl Jung, it's precisely in that chaos where something genuine and new can emerge. He once said, "Chaos is not the opposite of order, but the womb of change." And the man who figured out his life discovered that by fully diving into his most chaotic moments, he wasn't losing himself. He was finding himself. Imagine a volcano erupting. At first, there's only destruction, heat, explosions, and smoke that covers everything. It's terrifying, right? But once the lava cools, it forms fertile ground, making way for new life to grow, where before there was nothing. That's exactly how chaos works in our minds. It destroys outdated certainties, those comforting illusions we clung to out of convenience. But in doing so, it makes room for something authentic. Jung believed that those moments of inner confusion, no matter how painful, are invitations to explore the deepest layers of who we are. He called this the confrontation with the unconscious, a tense, often painful journey into the darkest corners of our psyche. He himself went through something similar during a personal crisis. He began having visions and hearing voices, experiences that, at first, made him question his sanity. But instead of running away, he dove into the chaos, studied every detail, and recorded his experiences. It was through that journey that some of his most important ideas were born. For the man who resolved his life, chaos took the shape of an emotional collapse. He felt lost, questioning everything, his decisions, his beliefs, the meaning of his life. But instead of trying to quickly patch the holes and restore order, he allowed himself to feel. He dove deep into the confusion. And it was there, among the tears and reflections, that he began to understand what needed to change in order to find clarity. He realized he had to accept the storm first. This process is everywhere, in the stories we tell, and in the myths that shape us. Look at Gregor Samsa, the protagonist of Kafka's The Metamorphosis. He wakes up transformed into a grotesque insect, and his life descends into total chaos. It's a tragic narrative, but it also mirrors real life. It reveals truths that were buried under the weight of daily routine. Or think of the phoenix rising from its ashes, turning destruction into rebirth. It's not just a beautiful legend, but a symbol of what we experience internally. Now let's get to the point. How can we move through chaos without getting lost in it? First, we have to accept that chaos is inevitable. Resisting it only makes the process longer and more painful. Instead, there are ways to navigate that turbulent terrain. Right? Don't worry about perfection or coherence. Just let your feelings flow onto the page. Let the words come out freely, like emptying a drawer full of messy things. Practice self-compassion. Chaos doesn't demand perfection. No one goes through a storm and comes out completely dry. Seek support. Talk to trusted friends or a therapist. Sometimes hearing a different perspective can help you find clarity and ease the weight you're carrying. Connect with your body. Breathe, walk, Feel the ground beneath your feet. When everything seems to collapse, returning to the present can be the anchor that holds you. Remember, chaos is not eternal. The man who managed to put his life in order learned this in the hardest, but most transformative way. He realized that no matter how endless the confusion felt, it was only a phase. And by accepting the disorder, his mind was able to reorganize in a way that was more authentic and aligned with his true self. Jung said that there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. This doesn't mean we should seek suffering, but rather that discomfort is an opportunity, a call. Just as gold is purified by fire, we too are transformed through difficulty. So the question becomes, what is the chaos in your life trying to teach you? What old certainties need to be let go of? Maybe the answers are closer than you think. You just need the courage to look beyond the disorder and discover the seeds of a new life. If you could see yourself exactly as you are, no masks, no filters, with both light and shadow, strengths and flaws, what would you observe? Carl Jung believed that this is the starting point of true fulfillment. For him, it wasn't about eliminating our imperfections or rejecting what we think is flawed. It was about integrating every part of ourselves. This is what he called individuation, the process of becoming a whole human being. Yet modern society pushes us in the opposite direction. We show only our best faces, the successes, the happy moments, the things that get applause. Social media amplifies this tendency. Windows into seemingly perfect lives that often hide as much as they reveal. And what happens to the parts of us that don't fit that ideal mold? Jung said, denying them doesn't make them disappear. On the contrary, it gives them even more power over us. It's like closing your eyes to a shadow. It doesn't disappear. It only grows larger. The man who managed to resolve his life understood this. He realized that hiding his fears, his mistakes, and the things that brought him shame only kept him trapped. By facing and accepting those parts of himself, he began to discover who he truly was. What he had avoided held his deepest lessons and the keys to his transformation. To visualize this process, think of the yin and yang symbol. The white side has a black dot, and the black side has a white dot. There is no light without shadow, and no shadow without light. This reminds us that our strength is born precisely from that duality, from the dynamic balance between opposites. Integrating light and shadow means recognizing that we are both, and learning to live with them in harmony. In practice, this integration begins with small steps, and it all starts with acceptance. Not passive acceptance, but courageous acceptance that looks at itself with honesty and compassion. When you make a mistake, instead of judging yourself harshly, ask, what can I learn from this? That simple act of kindness toward yourself holds incredible power to transform. Another step is to become aware of your projections. How many times have you been deeply bothered by something or someone? Jung said this often reveals aspects of yourself you're denying. Discomfort works like a mirror. Maybe someone's behavior reflects something you repress or don't want to acknowledge. By exploring those projections, you can learn a lot about yourself. Creativity is also a great ally in this process. Sometimes our shadows speak to us in subtle ways. Through dreams, strange sensations, symbols, art, music, or writing. All of these can serve as channels to understand those hidden messages and turn them into something meaningful. And above all, remember, the goal isn't to reach perfection. It's to learn how to live with inner conflict. You can feel fear and courage at the same time, anger and gratitude, insecurity and strength. These opposites don't erase your essence. they shape it. This integration of light and shadow isn't just a personal matter. When you learn to be more compassionate with yourself, you also begin to see others with greater understanding. Maybe you'll remember a harsh judgment you once made about someone and think, what if instead I saw this person as someone who also carries both light and shadow? Imagine how that could transform your relationships. Jung pointed out that this work of integration goes far beyond simple self-knowledge. He believed that by becoming more whole individuals, we create a positive impact on the world around us. The person who resolved their life realized that their inner process didn't just improve their relationship with themselves, it also improved their relationships and decisions. They began to act with more awareness, less reactivity, and greater presence. Now I pose a question to you. What would happen if you accepted every facet of yourself, hiding nothing, no longer pretending your shadows don't exist? At first, it might seem intimidating, but it could also be liberating. All the energy you spend trying to appear as someone else could be channeled into living authentically. Jung used to say, I'd rather be whole. This doesn't mean abandoning kindness. It means understanding that true kindness can only emerge from integration. By accepting our shadows, we reduce the urge to act impulsively or to project our insecurities onto others. In doing so, we begin to live more balanced and conscious lives. Resolving life isn't about erasing imperfections. It's about learning from them. It's the interaction between light and shadow that gives depth to our humanity. On this journey, you'll come to realize that what matters most is not reaching a final destination, but the path itself. So again I ask, what parts of yourself have you been avoiding? What could those parts teach you if you had the courage to face them? The answer is there, waiting for you to accept everything you are. What does it really mean to leave a legacy? Many think it's something grand, an eternal myth carved into history. But what if true legacy is intangible? Not something you can touch or measure, but a transformation so profound it influences not just your life, but the lives of those around you. For the man who resolved his life, legacy wasn't a great achievement or spectacular success. It was his process of self-discovery and acceptance, which inspired others to walk a similar path. Carl Jung shared a fascinating perspective on this. He said that true fulfillment doesn't come from being superior, but from being whole. That process of integration, of light and shadow, virtues and flaws, is what he called individuation. And this goes beyond the individual. When we find balance within, that balance begins to transform our lives and the environment around us. Imagine a circle where each person occupies a point. When one person changes inwardly, it alters the dynamics around them, their relationships, their choices, even future generations. The true legacy isn't a loud, heroic act. It's the sum of small inner shifts that leave a lasting impact. It's a silent transformation that, without making noise, changes everything. For Jung, resolving life means finding purpose, not a purpose imposed from the outside, like a title or position, but something that arises from within, from what truly matters to you. This man, by facing his shadow, integrating his inner conflicts, and accepting who he truly was, found something deeper than a goal. He discovered a meaning that transformed his entire existence. His decisions, his relationships, even the way he faced challenges, were reshaped by this inner clarity. He understood that the key wasn't to fix everything, but to change his relationship with himself. He accepted his flaws, acknowledged his limitations, and finally realized that the answers he had been searching for were always within him. This awareness didn't make him self-centered. On the contrary, it allowed him to give the best of himself to others. Want a concrete example? Imagine someone who spends years prioritizing their work, convinced that professional success is the only way to be valued. But one day that person stops and looks inward. They realize that what they truly long for is something much simpler: spending time with loved ones and building meaningful connections. That shift not only transforms their life, it also strengthens their relationships with those around them. Resolving life doesn't mean giving up your dreams or responsibilities. It means aligning them with what truly matters to you. Jung also reminds us of something essential. There is a greater mystery behind all of this. He was fascinated by spirituality, mythology, and synchronicity. Those meaningful coincidences that seem to have a deeper significance. For Jung, integrating these dimensions into our lives connects us to something beyond the surface, giving us a true sense of belonging. One image that illustrates this well is that of an unfinished work of art. Our life will never be complete or perfect, but what matters is the ongoing effort to shape it, finding beauty and meaning in the process. Think back to a recent moment when everything seemed to align, even if just for a few seconds. Those fleeting moments of harmony are glimpses of what it means to live with purpose. And that's what makes the story of the man who resolved his life so universal. It's not just his story, it's all of ours. Each person carries within them the potential to turn confusion into clarity and fear into courage. But to do so, you have to make a decision. Look inward, accept what you find, and build from there. So if you could leave a legacy today, what would you say about yourself? Don't underestimate the power of small actions. Resolving life is a daily commitment to self-knowledge and authenticity, and that commitment is the greatest gift you can offer the world. The idea of resolving life is often misunderstood as reaching a perfect state of peace and fulfillment. But in reality, it's something far more human, and because of that, far more powerful. It's not about eliminating difficulties or flaws, but about accepting who we are, with our light and shadow, and living in alignment with that truth. As Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." The man who resolved his life awakened to something simple, yet transformative. True change begins within. He came to understand that the shadow is not an enemy, but a guide. That chaos is not destruction, but the beginning of something new. That individuation is not isolation, but a reconnection with the whole. And you don't need to have all the answers right now. In fact, you may never have them all, and that's okay. Life isn't a fixed destination, but a constant process, a back and forth between accepting who we are and growing from that place. If there's one thing you can take with you from this, it's this. The most valuable work we can ever do is inner work. That's where we find meaning, purpose, and most importantly, peace. It doesn't matter what stage of the journey you're in. There's always room to take one more step forward. In the end, the greatest legacy we can leave behind is to be authentic and whole. Before we wrap up, I want to share a personal story with you. There was a time in my life when everything felt disconnected. It was like walking in circles, constantly asking myself, why does none of this make sense? It was during that turbulent time that I discovered Jung's ideas. It wasn't an instant revelation or a magical moment, but a slow process, like untangling inner knots I didn't even know were there. Little by little, I began to realize that the answers I was so desperately searching for outside had always been within me. This journey wasn't about fixing things. It was about accepting my humanity, with all its imperfections, complexities, and also its beauty. And that led me to a depth I never expected. I want to take this moment to thank you for being here, present, and joining me in such an intimate reflection. Looking inward isn't easy, and the fact that you're willing to engage with these ideas says a lot about your courage and openness. If this video resonated with you in any way, don't hesitate to share your experience in the comments. Never underestimate the power of your story. It might be the spark someone else needs to begin their own path of self-discovery. And now, congratulations, yes you, for making it this far, for taking one more step in your journey of self-awareness. Big or small, every step matters. Don't forget to give this video a like, share it with that friend who's always questioning life, and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring topics that might change the way you see yourself and the world. Before I go, take a look at the screen. There are two suggested videos that can expand your perspective even further. Which one will you choose? Don't worry. Choices are rarely random. Click and discover where this decision might take you. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember, every step inward is a step toward your true essence.